In this second video, I want to talk to you about the nuts and bolts of what shame is. What does shame look like, and what would it feel like if we're having an experience of it? But first I want to talk about the difference between embarrassment, humiliation, guilt and shame. Embarrassment is more short term. It's kind of when we mix up our words, when we trip, when we forget someone's name, that kind of thing. And it's kind of a bit like an oops moment, and it's often a bit funny. Humiliation is more about whether we feel we deserve the treatment that we've been given. People who feel humiliated believe that they don't deserve it, and it often comes with some righteous anger with that. So I'll give you an example. I know that I was late, but to shout at me in front of the boss was totally out of line, and I don't deserve that. Yeah? Guilt focuses on behaviour. I did something bad, I made a mistake. So in the same situation it would be, God, I slept in, I missed my train and I've left my work at home, and God, I'm having just one of those days. And I really need to look at my time management skills. Then there's shame, and shame is much more a focus on self. It's about I am a mistake, I am bad, and I am flawed. So in the same situation again, it would be I am such an idiot for sleeping in. I'm an idiot for missing the train. I'm so hopeless. And I wouldn't be surprised if the boss fired me because I'm useless at this job. Guilt and shame are the two that people kind of mix up a little bit. So guilt is much more a focus on behaviour. I've made a mistake. Shame is much more of a focus on self, which is I am a mistake. And it's a deeply internal thing. I wanted to look at Brene Brown's definition of shame, which is shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of acceptance and belonging. So how does that manifest in our lives? What does it feel like? So I'm going to give you an example of this happened to me, and I've witnessed it happen to many people over time. And then I will give you 3 shame reactions to this example, to this scenario. So I'm standing at the checkout. I've got people coming for dinner, and I've just needed to pick up some supplies. I've handed my credit card over, and I'm standing there thinking, have I got everything that I need for the menu that I've prepared, that I'm going to prepare? When I hear the beep, and then the young man holds up the machine and announces that I have insufficient funds. Reaction number 1. I go off on a complete rant. Of course there's money there. What's wrong with your machine? And then that continues into the incompetence of financial institutions, the government and its big business versus the little guy on the street, and all the time the poor young man behind the counter is wishing that Scotty would just beam him up. Yeah, reaction number 2. The moment I hear the words insufficient funds, I want to die 1,000 deaths. I wish and I'm praying that the earth will open up and swallow me whole. I seem incapable of stringing 2 words together other than to mumble something about I'll be back as I run out of the store. And the third one, I immediately start talking to the checkout guy. I include everybody in the queue behind me, and it's sort of with this verbal explosion of self-put-downs about how stupid I am and how dumb I am with money, and how this machine and all it's a bit of a mystery to me, that in fact it was my husband who was good with money, but he left me 6 years ago for the woman across the road, and who would blame him because I'm just so stupid. So what just happened? In that moment, with the stress of the queue behind us, the technology, we kind of just move from operating in the prefrontal cortex here, which is the thinking part of our brain, and we slip down into our limbic system, which is in the back of our brain, which is the fight or flight area. And that's kind of like this computer has just gone offline. And what's more, at the same time, it's like this poltergeist has entered our body that we have no control over. Our mouths become dry, our hands are sweaty, we turn into a beetroot, some of us. And we're absolutely positive that everybody in the store is watching us and that they're judging us. So does any of this sound familiar to you? And let's just say, for the purpose of this exercise, that you're good with money, you're really good with money, you've always been good with money, and there is money in this account. So why would you have such a strong reaction? Well, somewhere in your past, and I would suggest that it's within your childhood, you have lived a negative experience around money and all that that brings with it. So you may well have experienced hardship or ridicule or deprivation or humiliation. You may have had a parent walk out over money issues, so then it's attached to love and to your worth. And it certainly gives you an experience of being less than. And with that, there's going to be a whole lot of serious underwriting taking place with regards to your beliefs around money. And so you're going to, this is where you get to create your beliefs around money. And those beliefs may well be, without money I am powerless, without money I am worthless, without money I'm going to be ridiculed, without money I'm not safe, without money I may be abandoned, and money is somehow then attached to worthiness and love. And without money I'm going to be vulnerable, and without money it's going to be very shaming and painful. And this is where a shame troll is created, what I call a shame troll. And to me, a shame troll is like the invisible hand of the wounded child within us. And it's going to underwrite the parameters of all the decisions that we make about ourselves and our place in the world on different issues. And in this particular case, it will be about money. From then on, we set about protecting ourselves from ever having to experience the discomfort of having to relive those particular kind of experiences. And I think that it's the shame troll's job to warn us whenever we're getting too close. And the most effective way that it knows how to do this is by getting us to run towards it, away from it, or against it, which were kind of the three examples that I used in with the reactions in the example that I used. And sometimes we can use a combo of the whole three. But if we go back to that checkout example, the moment the guy holds the machine up and says insufficient funds, we are transported back in time to a decision that a 5-year-old or an 8-year-old has made about the shame of not having money. So you can see that this kind of thinking and these kind of belief systems make these situations pretty tricky and very stressful. So let me give you a couple of other examples of where you may feel shamed. When your workmate questions your work. When your mother scoffs at your suggestion that you want to do Christmas lunch at your place this year. When your partner doesn't support you at a work function or at a family gathering. When your partner criticises your parenting. When someone asks you, how come you haven't had a baby yet? And when you find yourself tearing up in public. And that makes me think about the forums for shame. And I think that there are at least 5. Firstly, there's a public forum. And that's about when we're out and about, we're with family and friends, workmates, and we're at events, family gatherings, parties, that kind of thing. Where the shaming comment is meant for all to hear, and it's usually to increase the status of the speaker. Then there's what I call private public, which is when we're out in public and we're usually with a partner or a family member, a friend, and it can be with a workmate. So the shaming comment is usually covert, and it's kind of like muttered under the breath. And it's when they walk past or they're standing behind you. It's usually just within earshot. And it's meant to sting and it's meant to undermine. Then there's the private in-house. So this is at home. This is where you live. This is between family members, and it can be subtle and it can be brutal. It can be intergenerational, and it can last your life long. Then there's the inner forum, which is your head. And this is where you can continue to reinforce the shaming experiences that you've had, add some more of your own in there, I guess. But we do it ad nauseum sometimes. Then there is the social media platform. And social media has created a whole new forum for shaming and bullying. And this is where the perpetrator, usually shamed by their own cowardice, can hide behind a screen or an avatar and lob their poisonous grenades at us from there. So then there is another thing that I want to talk about, which is some common factors that we have in a shaming experience. So whilst every shaming experience is kind of unique for you, there are some common factors. And one of these is feeling uncomfortable in your body. And this will be experiencing things like dry mouth, a pounding heart, sweaty palms, and blushing. And there is a list of other things as well. Another common thing is this strong, uncontrollable desire to fight or argue or be angry. And then another one is to be nice, to be over nice, to kind of smooth the situation over. And a third one would be not wanting to be there, a desire to run away. And they are the three shaming reactions that I used with the checkout example. Then there is our ability to string sane, sensible adult words together just vanishes. And on top of that, we often say and do things that we will regret later. And then another common factor is we replay the event in our heads 1,000 times. And we usually play out a whole lot of different scenarios that kind of will give us the upper hand. So none of it is nice, and we all wish that there was some way around. Well, there is, and my guess is that you wouldn't be watching this video if you weren't canvassing the possibilities of change. And there's no doubt about it, change is stressful and change is very challenging. And I used to be the queen of resisting change. And then I had an epiphany, and this would be over 10 years ago now, when I realised that my not ready yet had turned into 10 years. And even though I still had my list of not ready yet reasons, I thought, my God, when am I ever going to change? And then the thought of staying stuck, of staying where I was, became more fearful and more stressful than the idea of embracing change, which is what I started to do. So I would encourage you to double check your not ready yet reasons, and I'd say to you, don't let 10 years sneak past before you learn to embrace change.